I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Jordan Bateman, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Welcome back to the show, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
The royal visit to British Columbia. Canadians, I guess, are kind of split. Do we really like the royal family? It appears that we love them when they come to visit. And then we get the bill. $2 million alone for RCMP protection for the royals.
Yeah, it is a big bill, and then $600,000 from the provincial government, and we expect probably another $1 million or so in federal costs. There's no doubt the royals are expensive. I guess we should be grateful they don't come more often in order to save us money, but you know, for me, I am believe it or not, a monarchist. I believe I love the culture and custom of the royal family. The fact that as a constitutional monarchy here in Canada, they are the heads of the head of state for this nation, and therefore, from time to time we host them when they visit. So this is where my monarchist side really does battle with my fiscal conservative side. And it certainly provides arguments for the Republicans among us who would like to see Canada move away from the royal family.
But if you saw how much it costs for Donald Trump to visit a city, I know when he was in Bellingham, that cost a super fortune there. They had to call out the National Guard to help the police.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, New York is finding this out now with, he's not even sworn in yet, but having the president-elect at Trump Tower most days, it's been a huge cost to the city of New York along with the federal government. So, heads of state are expensive. Sometimes we forget, you look at Prime Minister Trudeau's travel expenses and they're quite pricey. But, you need to magnify that the higher up the food chain you are. And, when you are the head of state for a country or the heir apparent to it, there is going to be a cost. It's tough for me because, I'm sure we could go through the bills piece by piece, find places where money could be saved, and certainly we would, beg our elected officials to try to find ways to save money on these trips. But at the same time, it's kind of the cost of having a king or a queen. It's kind of the cost of having this type of government structure. From time to time, you're going to have to pick up the tab for their visits.
Also, people will say with the royals in British Columbia, they're good for the economy because so many people traveled to see them in person. So they stayed in hotels, ate at restaurants, took airline trips, grabbed a ferry. They perhaps pay for themselves.
Yeah, I find that argument to be very weak. And frankly, I would argue against that type of justification. There's very little or no evidence of any kind of economic impact from the royals visiting, and how I would put it to you is this way: can you tell me anywhere that the Queen, Charles, Will, and Kate have been since Canada? I'm sure they've traveled. One of them at least has traveled to other countries, done tours there. But none of us are booking flights to go there or anything like that. So I think the economic spin-off argument is overstated. But again, this is, to me, it's kind of just a built-in, baked-in government cost. We don't complain about the cost of elections, for example. Those are things that have to happen, even though they cost often tens of millions of dollars. Likewise, it's hard to really complain about the baked-in cost of this.
Of course, I'm also wondering, the Windsors are amongst the richest people in the world. Couldn't they pay for their own trip here? Or is it different if a government invites them and they're expected to be gracious hosts?
Well, I think it is different if a government invites them. So let's run a parallel argument here. Let's say Oprah Winfrey decides to come to British Columbia. Well, we wouldn't expect to pay Oprah's flights or Oprah's security tab or anything like that, or her hotels or her food. But Oprah Winfrey is a celebrity. Oprah Winfrey is a very wealthy billionaire, but she has no attachment to our government. She's not a head of state or a future head of state. She's not a member of our royal family. So we start to go, okay, well, what's the difference there? Well, celebrities don't have an official role in our government as the royal family does.
Yes, and so far Winfrey isn't on the money either.
Well, that is correct. Last time I checked, Oprah is not on the money, although I give it 10 years in the United States, who knows?
Trudeau's trip across the country, he says to stay in touch with common Canadians. Who is paying the bill for this cross-country tour?
Well, we know it's not the Aga Khan. That was for his holiday. But the people paying the bill for his trip across Canada are taxpayers. And so now you can have a little bit of a different discussion, right? In light of what we've just talked about with the royal family, is it worth the money to send Trudeau across the country? And frankly, the question is, it depends on what's happening in these meetings. So, I actually do think it's good for the Prime Minister to interact with people, real people, to hear their concerns front and center. Certainly it's something Stephen Harper didn't do enough of. Trudeau needs to know that energy is costs are going up because of his carbon tax. He needs to know that people are concerned about things like that, about marijuana legalization, about democratic reform, about all these different issues. It's a good reminder. I'm not sure it needs to happen so early in the term, but nonetheless. However, where we get concerned is when we hear that the Liberal Party of Canada is handling the invitation. The Liberal Party of Canada may or may not be collecting information from participants. That's when it becomes a partisan trip. So if the government's going to pay for it, taxpayers are going to pay for it, it should be run, as a government kind of thing, but with very little or no involvement whatsoever by the political party. That to us will be the litmus test, and it's one we're still trying to get to the bottom of.
Yes, is he trying to be a better prime minister, or is he just gathering info to fight the next election?
Yeah, and this is what political parties do, right? I mean, last year the NDP had a thing where they were going to surprise John Horgan with a birthday card. You could go to the NDP website and plug in a birthday greeting to John Horgan. Well, it's not really about John Horgan. It's not like John Horgan doesn't get the NDP emails. He knows exactly about the surprise birthday card. It's about collecting information that they can reach out to people and see if they can start to cultivate them into supporters. Likewise, Vision Vancouver, masters of this. Vision Vancouver has all sorts of both city-sanctioned and city-unsanctioned meetings. And they're always there collecting people's information so that they can try to turn them into Gregor Robertson supporters. So this is where the separation between party and state needs to be a lot clearer and a lot cleaner. And I'm hoping that reporters are digging into some of these stories we're hearing about the Liberal Party collecting information and trying to see if they're true or to debunk them. Well,
of course, that you're assuming that there are reporters to ask questions.
Yes, I am. It does seem that he's getting good, media coverage and social media coverage. So hopefully there's still a reporter or two out there in the press pool traveling.
Yes.
Beyond the hundreds that are working for CBC there.
Well, of course, CBC, there's 20 people telling the one reporter where to go.
Yeah, I don't envy the job of the CBC frontliner, that's for sure.
What's your impression of Vancouver Mayor Robertson not being around during the 6-week ice crisis?
Yeah, Icecouver, I think, was the hashtag that trended for a while. I think this is another example of how arrogant and out of touch Gregor Robertson is. Remember before the last election, he got all teary-eyed and apologized to the public for not listening and not, promising he'd do better if we just reelected him. Well, lo and behold, he got reelected, and guess what? Tigers don't change their stripes. Zebras don't change their spots. Gregor doesn't start listening to people. So he's, he was away for 6 weeks. He looked, his first public event was today, a TransLink re-announcement. He looked tanned and happy, good for him. Meanwhile, the reporters who had battled through the the ice and snow to cover a bunch of events and accidents and other things that have happened over the past few weeks. The city's bungling of the snow crisis. They certainly did not give Gregor an easy ride at this press conference, and they shouldn't. These kind of fancy trips are, you have a right to go wherever you want and to rest. No doubt about it. And certainly Gregor Robertson is a multi-millionaire. He can afford to travel wherever he wants. But it is really hard to stomach, I think, for the taxpayers scrimping and scraping to get by when you see your elected official on a fancy vacation and you're at home shoveling snow and wondering why the city isn't salting your roads.
Well, of course, we saw the mini riots at the fire halls that did hand out a handful of salt now and then. The city would seem to be shocked to ignore all these long-term predictions that it was going to be a colder than usual winter. And I guess for Gregor, if it isn't good bicycle weather, why would he stick around?
Well, Gregor today tried to pin it on climate change, which, it just goes to show you it's always about ideology for Gregor, right? Like his reflex is to go back to his, Joel Solomon funded, Tides embedded ideology instead of just trying to, admitting that, hey, this is the third big snow and ice crisis since he became mayor in 2005, and it's the third time the city's failed. And that's on him and his leadership group, and they need to do a better job.
And how do you blame ice and snow on global warming?
Well, this is the thing, right? Like it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the narrative. And I think that's why, bluntly, there's more skepticism now about these climate change folks than there has been in the past few years, because it seems like everything gets lumped into climate change. Whether it's, there's evidence it's connected or not. It seems like the terms change in order to fit the message. Or to fit the facts. So, Jane Fonda goes to Fort McMurray and frankly pisses off a bunch of hardworking Alberta folks who are trying to rebuild a town after a devastating fire. And she accidentally went off message. She kept calling it global warming. Clearly, Jane didn't get the memo. They don't call it global warming anymore because it's cold. They call it climate change now. So I do find it amusing that they're struggling so hard to find the message in order to fit the facts as they see them.
Well, I'd like to see a carbon tax stop sunspots, volcanoes, a change in the Earth's orbit, a change in the Earth's tilt towards the sun, asteroid hits, and other cosmic events.
Yeah, the climate has always been changing. There's no doubt about it. And hey, human activity may or may not be contributing to it, but it's certainly not the sole source. And from where I sit, you'd be better off trying to figure out how to prepare for slight sea level rises and other issues, especially in a coastal city like Vancouver, rather than try to tax the heck out of Canadians when, you're right. We can't stop sunspots. We can't stop the tilt of the Earth, and we certainly in Canada aren't going to be able to stop China from pumping GHGs into the atmosphere. So for me, it's more about transitioning into what this world may look like, making sure that you're preparing infrastructure as best you can, rather than trying to punish people for things they can't control.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after the break.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior. With a proven operator and finance team, Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, the New York Times did a major article about the salaries that are paid to two Canadian premiers by their parties while they're holding political office. Those two premiers, Brad Wall in Saskatchewan and Christy Clark in British Columbia. Is it okay for their parties to pay them, as they call it, a stipend of $37,000 to Brad and $50,000 a year to Christy? To a lot of Canadians, that is not a stipend. That's a good year's salary.
It is a good year's salary for many Canadians, but you know what, Jim? I don't have a problem with it. And here's why. The money raised by the BC Liberal Party and the Saskatchewan Party, it's not taxpayer money. It's not forced from people's hands. It's not taken through coercion or threats of going to jail or garnishing wages. It's purely voluntary donation. And, you know, that party has the right to spend that money as they see fit. If they're not taking it under force of law, you know, I'm okay with that. It's not a tax. You know, one thing that we don't talk about when it comes to Premier Clark is, you know, MLA pay has been frozen, or was frozen, for 5 years. When the recession hit in 2008, MLAs scrapped their pay increases, actually 6 years, and then just in this past year, they've gone back to a small cost of living increase. So it's not like she's been taking big raises these past 6 years from taxpayers, and then also grabbing the stipend as well. You know, there is a separation between the two, and you know, sometimes I look at what the premier makes compared to what a deputy minister makes, compared to you know, what the head of the Victoria Sewage Treatment Center construction project makes. And you think to yourself, like, geez, you know, maybe these politicians, maybe these premiers are a little bit underpaid compared to the so-called experts around them.
Perhaps all the premiers should be paid by their parties, and taxpayers don't pay them a cent.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I wouldn't have a problem with taking politicians off the salary rolls. Certainly would save a little bit of money. There is some evidence, places like Calgary. I think New Hampshire New Hampshire's one of the New England states. They actually only pay $1 to their legislators. As long as the donations to those political parties were publicly disclosed, so you could see who they were coming from before elections happen. I just do not have a problem with I'm not going to set my hair on fire worrying about how the BC Liberal Party spends its members' money.
Now, of course, the BC Liberal Party and the Federal Liberal Party do hold massive fundraisers where you pay so much per plate, 20 grand maybe, and you get access to the leader. Is there anything flawed with that?
Well, the problem is, what would you do how would you change that? I mean, the only other alternative is to give taxpayer money to political parties, you know, a per vote subsidy like the one that used to exist federally. And I just don't think people pay their taxes or should be paying their taxes in order to fund partisan political parties. I don't see that as critical to infrastructure. I don't see it as important for health or safety. I don't see that as part of what a government should be collecting money to do. So, you know, do I love that, you know, people who have $1,500 can chat with the finance minister, and little old me has to do it through letters or campaigns and things like that? No, I don't love that. But at the same time, as long as it's disclosed beforehand, as long as you see who's been giving money to which political party before you go into the election booth, I'm okay with that.
What do you think about Ontario's move to make it illegal to live off the grid?
To live? Oh, I haven't heard about this one. So literally, like, you have to have an Ontario Hydro number?
Apparently there's talk of that, or they're making a move towards that, yes.
Well, that to me, Ontario's energy policy might be the worst in North America. Now, I give BC Hydro grief, but man, they look like Einstein compared to what's gone on in Ontario, just blunder after blunder. I suppose if I had the chance to move off the grid in Ontario, I might, in order to save these incredible heating costs. The picture from this week, or last week, that's really stuck in my mind is that woman at that meeting in, I think it was Belleville or Peterborough, and she was a single mom, working a job, and she spent more in energy costs to heat her house than she spends in her mortgage. And she's crying at that forum with Justin Trudeau and asking why he's making it even harder by bringing in this carbon tax. That to me, that should be a grave concern for all British Columbians, right? Like, the higher energy costs get, the more energy poverty we're going to see. And, already, there's a great story off of Vancouver Island, from a CBC radio host there who was talking to some BC Hydro people about, how you're going to manage your bills with all the electric heat that happens on the island. Again, energy poverty, it's something that we're so close to. We've got to really push back against. And that's one of the reasons why we're so hard on BC Hydro, trying to push them to make smarter decisions.
Well, Canada here, we have the coldest nation on earth, and we're adding a carbon tax. We have so much carbon fuel available to us, and people who jump on natural gas as dirty. Have you seen the difference in the smog lines in Vancouver from the 80s to what we have now?
Yeah, Gregor Robertson wants to ban natural gas because it's a greenhouse gas emitter. Even though it's a tiny fraction of the tiny percentage of the greenhouse gases that Vancouver gives out compared to the rest of Canada. So, yeah, we should be pushing for more natural gas. One of the problems on Vancouver Island is natural gas was a fairly recent arrival, so people switched from oil heat to electric heat, and now they're seeing these massive bills come in because of the cold winter this year. So they would love to see more natural gas options for them in order to bring down their costs. The energy poverty are two words. I think, 3 to 5 years from now, will be in almost every British Columbian's vocabulary, simply because of the stupid decisions that are being made both at BC Hydro and by, ideological mayors like Gregor Robertson.
I know BC has at least a 200-year proven reserve of natural gas. Why are governments not pushing to use more of it more frequently? Maybe help people convert their cars to use it.
Yeah, well, the provincial government's been pushing this for years, to their credit. Not just on the LNG file, but, they pushed BC Transit and TransLink to try to use more natural gas. But, it's a fossil fuel, and people like Gregor Robertson are so bound to their beliefs and their green beliefs that they can't possibly allow this to go on. It's, in their minds, even natural gas is destroying the earth, even though, there's scant evidence that, BC natural gas has any impact on the environment.
And of course, as we know, one volcanic burp in one day can erase all the carbon credits from the past 10 years.
Oh, hell, one day of hot air from Vancouver City Hall seems to have the same effect.
Jordan, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
My guest has been Jordan Bateman, the BC director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, their website, taxpayer.com. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. If you have any questions for us, you can email us at info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.